All right. So yes, we should be live now. It says we are, so we're gonna go with it. Worst case, we'll put up the recording. Wanna welcome everyone who's showing up today. My name is Jeremy Chimbert. I'm the owner and practitioner at Pacific Northwest Shamanic Healing. Today with me, I have Ana MacGregor from Dancing Otter Healing Arts. And today we're just going to talk about body movement and how it helps people with PTSD and trauma recovery. So Anna, why don't you first just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a lifelong dancer. I've danced for like over 20 years, and had actually got into yoga through not being able to dance, ironically. I had a pretty catastrophic horseback riding injury, and I was just in a lot of pain. And my physical therapists were like, you should go try this. Um, and so I did. I was in running start community college at the time. And so I just took a class through the school because I needed a credit. And that kind of jumped me into, uh, what's now lifelong practice. I got my first teacher certification in like the end of 2019. So I've been teaching actively for about 5 years, and um, have kind of recently started to transition out of maybe a more what we understand as traditional yoga
Mm.
into like a somatic therapy aspect, but still taking it through the lens of yoga, which inherently addresses a lot of the things that come with PTSD. Um, so, first and foremost, we work on creating a sense of safety in the body and the nervous system, which really allows for a better communication in the nervous system itself and an easier flow through the sympathetic, the fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, your like rest and repair states. Um, so it really just works pretty naturally. And then I've just kind of leaned into that a little bit more as almost like a yoga therapy kind of practice.
Okay. And so how would you define the difference between regular, quote unquote, regular yoga and somatic release?
I'm going to do this without getting on a soapbox. So, what we in the Western world have kind of adopted and taken as yoga, um, you see all the time the like, Lululemon leggings and a hot yoga class and all of these. And that is actually only one aspect of what yoga is as a whole. Um, it really is more of a philosophy kind of school of thought than anything. The physical practice is one of 8 pieces that really make it up. Um, and so I I love a good power flow, but it is not very conducive to a calm regulated nervous system. you know. Um, so with that in mind, somatic therapy is a much more targeted, um, I don't want to say purposeful because a yoga practice of any kind is purposeful. But it's a little more directed towards uh, releasing patterns of tension that our bodies have kind of held on to through all the things we've experienced. And I actually thrive working one on one with people. It's one of my favorite things to do because we can get really in the nitty gritty and really come up with what works for you and your body.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's really just taking different movements and postures and flows and applying them in a very dedicated is not really the word I want to use, but it really is a very like purposeful way.
Because with that, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert in here, but whenever we go through trauma, and I believe you can have trauma without PTSD, but you can't have
Mhm.
PTSD without the trauma. Like that's just,
Yep. Yep.
but whenever I say PTSD only, I'm still referring to the actual trauma that's happened.
Yeah.
But whenever you're going down these roads, you're not only does your mind remember what happened, but your body also remembers what happens. And so
Absolutely.
when you go through that accident and then you're triggered again, you might have the same kind of tension or, you know, response patterns that your body had when you went through the accident or situation the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is science behind it. We have this beautiful loop of a web of connective tissue called fascia. And it is a connective tissue. It's made up of like collagen and proteins and water. It's a lot of water. Um, but it touches every single cell in your body. So on the superficial level, there's a layer right under your skin that kind of lets your skin move. There's layers all in between your muscles that allows things to like slide over each other um, and all of that fascia is an incredibly conscious tissue. And I think at this point, most of us have heard the phrase, the body keeps the score. And I twist that a little bit to say that your body tells your story because your fascia holds on to all of those things. In somatic therapy, we call it armoring, where something, that our nervous system perceives as traumatic happens and our bodies immediately start to like tense as we go into that fight or flight state. And all of that is your fascia responding to the stimulus that, your system is giving off like, oh, we're in danger. We need to protect ourselves, which is why we see really common things when people get activated and get stressed and triggered is that we see the shoulders start to come up and round forward and we start to like hunch. And that's all a protective mechanism. But it's really easy if we're not able to process and come back into our sense of safety that tension stays and becomes a pattern. And so anytime a trigger happens, because triggers are going to happen all throughout our life, um, when that trigger happens, our bodies only know how to go into that response that it's had before. It's the only way that it knows how to keep itself safe. And so a lot of the work that I do is working through those in a way that, you know, we can start to mitigate that response and get our body back to a place where it says, oh, wait, no, we are safe. We can let that go.
And so when you're working with a client, how would you go about doing that? So I don't know a lot about somatic therapy just right off the point, but I know like with some talk therapies when working with people with veterans or whoever that goes through trauma, PTSD, sometimes they'll make them relive the moment and then do like breathing exercises or try to find a different way to format the memories. Is it kind of the same as somatic where you're focusing on what happened and at the same time working on trying to release it? Or is it more just do these different types of exercises and the releases will automatically start to happen?
Um, I never ask people to relive anything. If there's a point where somebody wants to talk and tell their story, I love that.
Mhm.
Like I'm a storyteller. I'm a musician as well. And I love like holding space for people's stories. But I'm never gonna come right out and ask, like, well, what happened to you? So I give a lot of tools um, and like tips and tricks sort of things throughout the day. My coach has introduced me to EFT or tapping. And that has really kind of profoundly changed my day to day. If you see me in real life and I'm doing like little finger squeezes or just like a little bit of, that's where that comes from. um, but really, I'm doing two things. So the first is pattern interrupt. So the tapping, the breathing, I mean, and it could even be as simple as like a stretch, just something to interrupt the spirals as you notice them starting. And the second thing is we're just kind of rewriting that fascial memory as a whole. Um, so bodies in motion stay in motion, whether that motion is tensing and continuously contracting, or if it's in more of a flow. So really what I'm doing with the yoga based movement practices is working on smoothing out, releasing tension, and in with practice and with time, that becomes more of like a daily practice and kind of a maintenance so that you can keep that felt sense of safety and keep things in a more relaxed state. So it's just kind of rewriting the patterns.
Mhm.
We're never trying to erase what happened or minimize or any of that, but it's like that happened and we're going to help you to feel safe so that you can, you know, process in whatever way works for you.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, it's what I like to say a lot with clients is I can't make you forget the past, but we
Mm-hmm.
change how you react to it.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
this is what happened, sucked, whatever. This is what
Mhm.
happened. And some days you still might have moments where you're going to come down, but you get to choose how you react going forward.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You're
And
going
so,
to flow through all of the emotions and all of the feelings,
yeah,
but we're going to make your body a safe, secure, supported place to live in.
no, that makes sense. And with that, so I guess one question, without going into too much detail, because I don't want to give away anybody's privacy or anything, but what is one of the most, I guess, amazing things or a person who had it so rough and then you started working with them and now they're doing something amazing and great? Like, what's a good example of that?
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about my own experience.
Okay,
That's
that works too.
because everything that I do is things that I've worked on myself. So my PTSD is very complex. Lots of little bits have added up over time. And it's really been in the last like year and a half, 2 years that I've started to like change the cycle and break the patterns. Um, I was, COVID was rough for me. I went through a full neurological burnout. I was forcing myself to get out of bed, do the bare minimum at work, do the bare minimum of like housework, chores. I managed to feed myself about 75% of the time. And other than that, I was in bed. I was like incapable of doing anything. And it was awful. um, I was so activated all the time. I was so in fight or flight all of the time. And I just didn't have the capacity to get myself back in to a better state
Mhm.
of being, really. Um, and I finally really just decided like enough is enough. I need to get back on my mat. I need to get back into my practice. And for the first couple of months, probably, I didn't even get on my mat. I just sat in my bed and I put one hand on my chest and one hand on my stomach and I just took breaths. I just like, I used box breathing. Um, I used, it's called a physiological sigh. You take a big deep breath, you pause, you take in a little more air, and then you let the whole thing, in through the nose, out through the mouth, um, just to try and get myself reset. And then once I was in that place where I was like, okay, I can do, I can get up for 10 minutes. Um, I spent a lot of time in really gentle restorative postures, spent a lot of time in child's pose. Um, and it just slowly over time, I felt like I was able to add more and more and more. And it did take me about 6 to 8 months to feel like I was functioning at some sort of normalcy.
Hmm.
But it was just, I really had to commit to my daily, here's what we're going to do. Um, I think I still have tear stains on one yoga mat because so much of it just started to release and pour out. Um, so yeah, it's hard to like list out everything that I did,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, just very gentle, very slow. Um, Bodies really love like big, round, soft shapes. So I wasn't doing a whole lot of like warrior two. I wasn't doing a whole lot of like super deep stretches. I mean, I have never, 20 years of doing yoga and I have never had a handstand. Like all of the like crazy things that you see on Instagram are awesome and they all have their own things to teach, but that's typically not what I do. Um, but yeah, I went from absolute cannot get out of bed burnout to like I have a job that I love. I'm getting back to seriously teaching and doing this work. I've been able to put myself back in school for my continuing education credits. And I feel like this is the most well adjusted I've ever been. So, and it was definitely in conjunction with like a care team, a support system, and um, good therapy, good like physical health care. Um, and I absolutely 100% advocate for a care team for everybody. Um, but yeah, I would not be sitting here in front of you if it was not for this work.
Nice. And you brought up a good point too, because there's many different layers or levels of trauma, and it's
Mhm.
one isn't better or worse than another because it's really it's your personal perception of what happened.
Yeah.
Your trauma can be compounded. It could be a societal trauma, like the whole world being in lockdown for a year and a half and forced to wear a mask and living in fear of staying 6 feet apart because we might kill our grandmothers, to a war that's been going on in the Middle East and they've been killing each other for thousands of years. Like there's more than just a car accident or getting shot at or watching your friend die, or there's many different ways to have trauma, and it's really on the individual level.
Yeah, and none of us are without it.
Yeah.
You know, we all have stuff. Like our world and our society just is that way.
And sometimes we don't even realize we're going through trauma. Like I know for myself personally, after my third deployment, I didn't think I had PTSD. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm fine. I didn't have anything. Nobody shot me. I didn't have to shoot anybody. Like I'm fine, but I wasn't fine and I had to work through that. And it's coming to terms with that and also realizing, okay, something's wrong. Let me work on that, which can
Yeah.
be hard for people to take that first step.
Yeah, I definitely borrowed this definition of trauma, but it rocked my world the first time I heard it. And I've kept it since. So trauma is anything that happens too much, too fast, or not enough.
Mhm.
It was that not enough that kind of got me. Um, and that is totally what your nervous system can handle. You know, things that are just fine for you may be way too much for, you know, uh, somebody sitting across from you or somebody that you walk by on the daily. You know, it really, um, I won't say it like depends on the person as like a sign of resiliency or whatever, but it really just depends on what your mind and your system perceive.
Mhm. I agree with that. And with that, trying to think of the next way to take this, but is there like a simple exercise you could tell somebody that they could try to do? They want to they want to just start somewhere. Besides, reaching out to yourself or somebody else, but if they were home right now and they just wanted to see what it's like, is there like a specific exercise you could give them?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the that physiological sigh that I mentioned
Mhm.
is one of the quickest ways to calm the nervous system and get it to a parasympathetic state. So you just take a big breath, about 90% of your breath in, pause for a moment, take in that last 10%, and then just let it all blow out. So 5 to 10 minutes of that, if you have the ability to step away and take a second, is amazing. Um, Coupled with like a child's pose or just like a comfortable seat, super great. The other one that I use, I'm going to get really close to my camera, so hopefully you can see this. This comes directly out of the EFT practices. You really just squeeze each side of your nail bed, and it's just like a gentle whatever feels good or right. And you just go like up one hand and then across the other, um, and then go back. That, I mean, you can do that in a meeting, you know, and nobody is going to notice. Um, that actually, you have all of these teeny tiny lines of energy that kind of web down your hand. And it follows like the Chinese medicine meridians,
Mhm.
um, which mimic your major fascial lines. They knew what they were talking about. But all that's doing is sending pressure and release signals all the way through the fascial chain. And that it just, again, really signals to your body like, okay, take a breath. Everything is okay. We're going to break up this pattern just a little bit at a time. So I would say those are the two like first things. Like start there whenever you're feeling a little bit activated, whenever you're feeling a little bit like you've, for me, I can really feel it start in my chest and my shoulders is where I start to get tense when I get stressed. Um, but yeah, everything, this is a very yoga thing. Everything comes back to your breath.
Mhm.
It's moving the majority of your major muscles in your torso. It's sending signal and oxygen and nutrients throughout your whole body. The more you can just sit and breathe really deeply, the happier your whole body is going to be.
Nice. Yeah, it's good, a good start for people. And
Mm-hmm.
just to touch on fight or flight a little bit for people who don't fully understand what that means. The best way I like to describe it is imagine you're outside and you see a bunny getting chased by a cat or a bird, and the bird or the bunny, they get away. And you'll watch their chest and it's just beating super, super fast because their heartbeat is going crazy. But if you watch them for about 30 seconds or so after the initial incident, the cat got, went somewhere else, they're up in a tree, whatever, and you'll notice that their chest will just beat really fast and then just stop and just start beating normal again. It's a really quick
Mhm.
reset that animals have, and we as humans don't have that. And that's, biological reasons for living off the land and being chased by saber-toothed tigers or whatever was out there when we were living in caves. And we've never learned how to truly reset that. But we were also a lot more grounded back then. So I think it was more of a natural reset that we used to have than we have today.
Yeah. Yeah, your sympathetic, your fight or flight side of your nervous system is all about survival. So your digestion shuts down, your body is going to pull blood flow in from your limbs into your torso so that it's available for your heart and lungs. Um, and it really is, we're about to get chased by a tiger. We need to be ready to run.
Yep.
Um, on the opposite end of that, your parasympathetic function is your rest and repair. This is where digestion fires back up, muscles can relax, process out all of the lactic acid from the potentially having to run to save your life. Um, and yeah, that's where your body can repair itself. That's where you can heal. Um, and mind or body, you cannot heal in a sympathetic state.
Hmm.
It's just not going to work. our um, our amygdalas and our like hindbrain, lizard brain, are very um, evolutionary wise. They're very old. They have not caught up to the rest of our prefrontal cortex, which tells us, lets us discern what's going on in the world. Um, so yeah, you can't heal in an activated state. No amount of talk therapy, no amount of like going for a run to burn it off. No, it's just not going to work. And I
Yeah.
hate to be that guy that's like, no, it doesn't work, but it doesn't. Which is like one of the first things we do every session, every class. I start with some of that deep breathing to get the body to calm down. Because in a perfect world, you are regulated enough that you can kind of flux and flow in and out of the sympathetic parasympathetic switch, but life is stressful. um Society, living in society is stressful, and we end up with a lot more sympathetic fight or flight activation, and definitely not enough parasympathetic rest.
No, agreed. And I would even add on, because you mentioned to be able to reset the mind and the body. Also, I work in I call it the spiritual level. So
Mm-hmm.
it's, and when I say spirit, I'm also talking about the energetic. So the energetic
Yep.
body. And when I have people with severe trauma, PTSD, I also have to reset their fight or flight before we can even truly start working on clearing a lot of the energetic blocks, because it's the same thing. It almost just clinches down and it's a lot harder and it takes a lot longer. So sometimes I'll work with people and we're doing nothing but resetting their fight or flight for a good half of the session. And then we can start doing a little bit of clearing, and then teaching them how to do it themselves. And then, they might be at a 110, bring them down to a 90. They come back, they're 95, bring them down to an 80, depending on if they're doing the homework and they're practicing, of course.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the problem, is we have these events, these triggers, we don't address them. And depending on how long they have been going on. So if something happened to you when you were 2 and you're in your 50s, you're going to be pretty escalated
That
versus if
is a
some
very ingrained pattern.
versus if you're 20 and now you're 23, it might be a little bit easier for you to get out of it. And
Hmm.
these are things we really need to start teaching the younger generation now, so that by the time they get to at least my age, because I know I'm older than you, get to my age, then it's like you won't be so unregulated and it'll be a lot easier for you to continue moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, because kids are so responsive.
Yeah.
I've done a couple of kids classes specifically, and like, yeah, it's fun. We get to like pretend to be animals and like do all the cool things, but they are so incredibly responsive because they don't have years and years of
Mm.
patterning that we do. So yeah, I love working with kids for that reason. Like they're so great, and if you can set the patterns from a younger age, they have a way better chance of being able to like maintain that and respond very differently as they go through their lives.
I mean, it's a little bit outside of what we're talking about, but let's touch on that just a little bit for kids. So, I'm a parent. There might be other parents watching this. What are some things they can do with their kids to help them regulate at an earlier age that maybe, they don't, I know my sons aren't going to want to sit there and do yoga poses. So is it
Right.
something as simple as just making sure they go out to play every day, get that body movement, or is there,
Hmm.
something a little bit more to it than that?
Yeah. I have some good ones for little kids because like maybe like, 3 to 8, 9, 10, because they're a little easier to like get into their imagination. Um, I Teenagers are a lot harder for me to connect with, to be perfectly honest. I'm like, I don't know what you like or what really grabs your interest. But yeah, the more they can be up and like, you know, up and about outside. I mean, walking is one of the most natural and beneficial movements that we can do. It's what our bodies are made for. So, go outside, ride your bike, go take a walk, heck, go for a run if that's your thing.
Hmm.
Go like find a ditch and go dig for some snails or something. The more they can be up and active and moving, the more their fascia is going to stay supple and hydrated and not get stuck into like video games.
Hmm.
With little ones, it's a lot easier. Little ones, it can be as simple as like, how high can you reach up to the sky? Reach, 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 stretch, stretch, stretch. Okay, big breath out, touch your toes. That can be enough. Even just doing that a couple of times can absolutely, they have the attention span of a squirrel. You spend 3 minutes with them and they forgot what was going on
I-
right before. Um, but yeah, I think all of us nowadays could take a little bit longer walk, get a little more motion, no matter what it is.
No, I definitely agree with that. And that's also part of that grounding side too. And
Mhm.
just being out in nature, go to a park if that's all you have available to you.
Yeah,
Luckily here in
go climb a
Washington, we
tree.
have we have tons of parks. We have tons of state parks, but other places might not have that available. But I mean, it's really just do the best you can with what you have. So just getting the fresh air the best you can,
Absolutely.
or go to the gym, like you said, and just go for a walk at the gym if that's what you can do.
Yep.
It's better
Yep.
than nothing.
Yeah. There was a long time in my recovery, especially during the winter, because I don't like the cold. Um, I would go and get on a treadmill and watch like trashy sitcoms on Netflix. That's what I had in me. It kept my mind focused. I was moving my body, and
Nice.
it's all, I mean, maybe don't like go watch horror movies or, you know, watch something nice that's funny. But if that's what you have available to you, go do it.
No, I think that's good advice. I was just checking to see if we had any comments, any
Questions.
questions. No questions, just
Okay.
Nessie saying thank you for sharing. So Appreciate Nessie being here. Sorry, it's
Yeah.
trying to make sure I do a better job at looking at these comments. All right, so I do want to say, so for the next part of this, we did announce, well, I did announce last week with Jeff that we're working on we have a 12-week program where we're going to touch the mind, the body, and the spirit. So Jeff, he's going to be our breath work mindfulness expert. You're also coming into the program doing body work and some breath work with it. And we actually
Yes.
sat down and met, all three of us, this past weekend and kind of mapped out how each person's area is going to overlap and work together. And so I do want to mention that is if you're looking at I even hesitate to call it a reset because it's a beginning to a recovery. Because for some people, 12 weeks might not be enough, but this 12 weeks will give you the tools that you need to continue on your own journey. So whether or not you want to work more with us later on or just continue down your path with these tools that we're giving, that's why I call it a reset, because you're resetting at least what you do on a day to day to help work on your own trauma and PTSD. So I don't know if you wanted to talk anything about that, about your part and what you're looking forward to bringing into the program.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a little bit of anatomy. So talking about what fascia is a little bit deeper, what it does, and a little bit in deeper in that nervous system um, capacity. And then I am going to go over I'm going to give a couple different like flow options um, for, if you have 10 minutes, here's some postures that you can do. Here's some movement that I have seen that bodies really respond to. Um, and a little bit of, I'm going to play off of what Jeff does for the breath work and kind of incorporate that so we get a really solid foundation. And then I am planning for the live call
Mhm.
when that happens to really just guide through a more full length um, yoga based uh, practice. And all of it is always um, take what resonates, what feels good in your body, and leave what doesn't. Um, I do teach every single thing on trauma informed protocols. So there will be options for taking breaks. I am usually able to provide adaptations for just about any pose, for any mobility level. Um, and yeah, the nice thing about it being virtual is like it really is like no pressure to do what anybody else is doing, no pressure to like make your body look like mine.
Mhm.
Um, you get to try things out, see what feels right. And if it doesn't, then don't continue. And I'm gonna honor you giving it a shot and saying, that's not for me, thank you.
No, that's important too. These are just tools to learn, to try, take
Yeah.
what works, what doesn't work. And it's the same thing with the stuff I'll be teaching or
Mhm.
Jeff's teaching. You might find that box breathing really works well for you, but doing the nose, breathing in and then breathing out is too much for you, or a certain pose might be too hard. It's do what you can.
Yeah.
The important thing is that you're trying, you're working what you
Hmm.
can and trying to clear it. And that's why we went
Yeah.
with these three levels of mind, body, and spirit, because I don't believe that just working on the spirit level is enough, or just working on the mind's enough, or even the body. Yes, they'll get you there, but
Hmm.
I do believe it would be slower if you only focused on one area.
Yeah.
Because like you said,
Yeah.
the body keeps the score. So if we're clearing the spirit level, but you still have all this tension stuck in your body somewhere,
It's gonna come back up.
yeah, it's only
Yeah.
halfway there. Or if
Yeah.
we're clearing
And
out the body, but you still have all these energetic blocks, it's only
it's
halfway there.
yeah. Yeah. And really all of the physical practice is opening up a conversation
Mhm.
with your body. Like just and I encourage people to get really curious about like what does this feel like first and foremost? And then not necessarily why, because then we could sit and spin in our heads for an hour. But what can I what do I feel safe enough to let go of? Um, so yeah, everything is just about being curious about what this physical thing that we're living in is doing.
Yeah, it's well said. And with that, I want to say too, if you're interested in the program starts March 1st. It'll be for 3 months, and we're going to tailor it around the people who show up. So I'll do intake calls with each person. I don't need to go into the full details and the histories of the why and the what either, because that's not important to what we're doing. But just to get a sense of what you've done so far and what you know, what you don't know, so that if we have 10 people show up and they all know box breathing and it doesn't work for them, as an example, then we'll get something else on the slot instead. So we want to make each container a safe place and a place that's built around the people in it. And there will be live calls where we can answer questions and Q&A and all that stuff, and we'll do live classes as well as some recordings that you can then take back with you and do practice, and everything will be built in on the website. And if you miss a recording, you can show up, all that stuff will be there. Nobody will be left out, and they'll have lifetime access. Trying to think of all the other stuff you're supposed to say with these kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if there's any questions for it, please reach out to me or in the DMs, or put a comment down below and I'll reach out to you. If you decide, hey, I don't want to do a 3 month program, I just want to work with Anna, that's fine too. Reach out with Anna.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
I'm not going to get it's, you got to find the teacher that's right for you, whatever that looks like. If you think body movement is where you want to be right now because you've done everything else, hey, go do body movement. Same with if you just want to work with Jeff or even just myself, whatever works for you. Or if it's another teacher completely. But always make sure you're working with somebody who you feel comfortable working with and teaching you what you need to learn.
That
And I'm sure,
definitely needs to be the right fit.
yep. And I
But
would,
yeah, I am totally available. My Facebook page is Dancing Otter Healing Arts, and email is just dancingotterhealing at Gmail. Happy to have a intake discovery call with anybody and see if it's a good fit.
perfect. Yeah, and I'll tag your Facebook group in the comments too, and any of the recordings.
Perfect.
That way people can get to it in case they don't know how to spell otter. Sometimes I don't know how to spell it. Perfect. Do you have anything else you wanted to say or before we wrap this
Um,
up?
I don't think so. I think we covered a whole lot.
Perfect. I appreciate your time on this, and I look forward to
Yeah.
working with you on this 12-week program. And again, if anyone's interested in joining, hit me up or hit Anna up and we'll start from there. Or if you know anybody that could really use it, send them our way too. The whole point is to try to help as many people as we can. It's super affordable. We're not trying to make thousands of dollars off of this. We're trying to keep it real simple and get it out there so that people get the knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate you being
Thank
on.
you. Have a great day.
You too. And all right. Cool. And let me stop the recording.